Thank you for reminding. All right. So Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23 says, if life were a river, the source of the river is the heart. Okay, that's where it flows from. In other words, if you whatever it is that you want your life to become, whatever it is that you want to become, you want to achieve, what he's saying is that the beginning of it is your mind or your heart, as the Bible calls it. Okay. And according to the scripture, the heart is a collective word for spirit and soul. Okay. The heart, Heart, that word heart, that's an English word that we're using, but the original scriptural word used in the Hebrew actually represents the spirit and the soul. I mean, if you look at the New Testament and the Old Testament, if you look at that, that's what it represents. Okay. So it flows from within you. Your life flow from within you. So he says that you should guard your heart, because what you find out of life flows from your heart. It's important. He's telling you, okay, so if a person is going to become a failure, if a person is going to become a thief, if a person is going to become, you know, a successful person, it's going to flow from the heart of that person. It's very important. Now, there are other factors that you will see that affect what we are talking about, because even as I'm saying this, I'm looking at other factors that are playing, together with these laws. But ultimately, it is what is in your heart that determines what you become. Ultimately, okay, ultimately is what is in your heart that determines what you become. You in particular, ultimately, it is what is in your heart that determines what you become or what manifests. So it's important. So I said that if you don't get it at the level of the heart, if you don't get it at that level, you won't get it anywhere else. No, you won't get it anywhere else. All right. So it's important that you get that. And that's why I spoke about the law of thinking, that, there is that law called thinking. And I'm going somewhere, just stay with me. So, the if I were to ask you guys, let me say this. I want to establish this fact. If I were to ask you and I were to say to you, you know um, what is a human being? I didn't say who is a human being. I said, what is a human being? And I would say, well, can you tell me what a human being is? Not who. So I'm not asking for your personality. I'm asking for what a human being is. How would you define a human being? Well, I know it's going to be difficult, even scientifically, to define what a human being is. It's going to be difficult. You cannot say human being is a living thing, because a dog is also a living thing. I know human being is a living thing, but the dog is also a living thing. So if you say a human being is a living thing, what's the difference between a human being and a dog? Because both of them are living things. So that definition will not go. So the truth is that it's difficult to define a human being scientifically, because science does not yet understand what a human being is, and that's the truth. So if I'll give you an example, if I'm speaking to a person right now and the person is in front of me, is talking to me, is laughing with me, we are gisting, and then all of a sudden this person starts shouting, my heart, my heart, my heart. Something is wrong with my heart. I'm feeling pain. And then within a few moments, the person is on the floor, and then I touch the person's body and I see that it has grown cold. The person has died. So if you look at the person, a few minutes ago, this person was shouting, was laughing. This person was like, this is awesome. I love you. I like you. And we're talking. And then a few moments later, this person is on the ground, lifeless. If I were to ask you, if I were to ask you, can you tell me scientifically and biologically what left this person's body? How would you respond? Now, I don't have time. I'm not going to ask you to respond, but I'm putting a thought that I'm going to answer. So I studied chemistry in the university. That's what I did. I did chemistry. So if I were to look at that person lying on the ground, I would say that this body still contains all of the atoms, all of the molecules, the ions, the macromolecules, that were in it while the person was alive before he died. So the atoms, molecules, and ions in this person after he died are still the same thing that he had before he died. So nothing has changed at the level of atoms, molecules, and ions. If you were to look at it biologically, what left the person? Well, nothing has changed because the cells are still there, the organelles are still there, the molecules, the tissues, the organs, the systems are still there. So what left that person? That is what till tomorrow scientists cannot tell you what left the person because they don't know. They don't know. I'm not telling you to take my words for it. Everything I'm saying, you can go on Google, go and do your research. Before coming out to say these things, I've done a lot of research on these things. They can't tell you what left the person's body because they don't know. So what left the person, they don't know. Okay. So if you look at it from a materialistic point of view, you will think or feel that a human being is simply a body, but it's not true. A human being is not a body. A human being is more than a body. And that is why something left. The body is still there, but something that was there is no longer there, even though the body, physical body, is still there. So what is that thing that left? So I tell people that you can liken a human being to a smartphone or to a computer. When you look at a computer, it's made up of two parts, the hardware and the software. The hardware is the physical part, and then the software is the invisible part, okay, that cannot be touched. However, you and I know that you cannot run a computer without a software. I mean, if I were to bring a brand new smartphone from the factory, brand new, everything in it, brand new, working, excellent. And then if I were to give it to you as a gift and I were to say, this is my gift to you, use it. And then you looked at it, turned it on, you couldn't find any single app on it. Not even Android, no Android or iOS, nothing on it. No phone app, camera app, call app, nothing on it. Would you be able to do anything with that smartphone? I know you know the answer already. It's useless. You can't do anything with it. Okay, you can't do anything with it. Why? Because the smartphone runs on that principle of software and hardware. You need the software, the invisible part, to work with the hardware in order for you to have a complete system that works, a complete technology. Okay, so that principle is the principle that the human being was built on by God. I mean, scientists, everything that you see today in our world came from the natural world. They looked at birds and they created airplanes. It's all over the place. Okay, so a human being is made up of an invisible part and a visible part. The visible part is your body, your physical body. The invisible part is the part that leaves a person when the person dies. That part you can't see. That part you cannot take to the laboratory. That part cannot be seen, discovered in the laboratory. You can't discover it there because it is the invisible part. All right. That part is what the Bible refers to as the spirit and the soul, or the heart, H-E-A-R-T. That's the part it refers to as the heart, or the spirit and the soul. So you have the visible part, which is your physical body, and then you have the invisible part, which is the spirit and the soul together, or what the Bible calls the heart. All right. So that's the part that controls the body. And so the Bible says in the book of James, I've forgotten the chapter exactly, it says that as the body without the spirit is dead. So it shows us there in the book of James, I think it's chapter 2 or so, or chapter 3, it shows us that the body without the spirit is dead. In other words, the physical man without that invisible part is dead. It's useless. You can't do anything with it. Okay? Good. So why am I saying this thing? There is a reason I'm going somewhere. Just hold on. I'm going to establish one, then I'll try to wrap up. So it's dead without it. The next thing is this, so the Bible's in the book of First Thessalonians, I think chapter 4, chapter 5, one of them. The Bible says that man is made up of spirit, soul, and body. That's what the Bible says. Spirit, soul, and body. So a man is not just made up of body, it's made up of spirit, soul, and body. Okay, so you right now, you are made up of three parts: spirit, soul, and body. The body is the physical part. The spirit and the soul, they are together. They are the invisible part. Okay, so the soul is the part. The soul is like a tool of the spirit, just like the brain is a tool of the body. The brain is a part of the body and it functions for the body. The soul is a part of the spirit and it functions for the spirit. Okay, I'm trying not to say plenty, but I'm going somewhere. Okay, so you have the spirit and you have the soul. So basically, man is a spirit, and that's what Jesus said when they asked him about God. He said that, look, God is a spirit, and those that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So God is a spirit, and the Bible says that man was created in the image and likeness of God. So if God is a spirit, then it makes sense to say that man is also a spirit. So man is a spirit. Okay, so the so what is a spirit? What exactly is a spirit? Let me put it this way. You can write it down somewhere. Okay, you can write it. You definitely have never heard, those of you that are within church circles, you probably have not heard something like this before, but just write it somewhere. Maybe later on we can talk about it sometime later. What is a spirit? A spirit is a thought, is the thought generating part of, is a thought generating machine. Let me put it like that. The spirit is the thought generating machine. That is the work of the spirit. The work of the spirit is to think. Okay, so the work of the spirit is to think. That's what it does. It receives thoughts. Okay, it thinks. That part of you, what it does is it thinks. It receives thought and it generates thoughts. That's what it does. Okay, all right. And then you find that the spirit is the thinking part of you. What's that word? The soul, I said, is a part of the spirit now. Now, what the soul itself is made up of three things: the mind, the will, and the emotions. The mind is the aspect of the soul, or the aspect of the spirit, if you like, that does the thinking for the spirit. All right. I said all of that to say this. You can write it down somewhere. The primary work of a man is to think. That's why I said all of that. The primary work of man is to think. What you were made to do, you were created to think. Okay? That's what you were made to do. If you do not know how to think, you cannot increase your life, the quality of your existence. So how does that translate into what I'm trying to share? The way the human being works is this. You think before you do. It is thinking first before you do. Okay? So your thoughts control your actions. You have to think first. Your thoughts, listen to me carefully, your thoughts control your actions. Whatever you do with your body appears first in your mind. Okay? Whatever you do with your body first appears in your mind as a thought. I don't care whether it appears as a thought, it appears as a feeling, it appears as a desire, it appears as an image, as a picture. All of these things I mentioned are various forms of thoughts. There are images are forms of thoughts, desires are forms of thoughts, bodies are forms of thoughts. All these things, they are forms of thoughts. So whatever it is that your body does first appears as a thought. If you look at the way your life has been, if you stand up from where you are sitting right now and you start walking towards the door, the reason why you stood up was because a thought appeared on your mind or in your mind. And that thought could have been that it was so fast you didn't even realize the thought. Something appeared in your mind and it was like, go outside, go and look at what you kept outside. It's 2 hours. Or it could be, go and ease yourself. You are feeling pressed. But a thought appears in your mind. And so the thought that appears in your mind is what you now use your body to express. So the body expresses the thought that appears in the mind. So the thoughts generated in the mind, or the thought received in the mind, or conceptualized in the mind, are the things that are expressed with the body and in the body. And that is how it works. So you have thoughts first. Thoughts first. Okay? So if you look at what you find on the screen, I believe you've seen what is on the screen. So you see there, let me try to wrap up with just this thought. Every aspect of your life, be it spiritual, mental, emotional, or physical, finds its origin in thoughts. Thoughts are the basic building blocks of life. They are the raw materials from which life itself is created. If success or progress is missed at the level of thoughts, it cannot be obtained anywhere else. And whatever you aim to become or achieve begins with thoughts. So these foundational elements precede money, people, opportunities, favors, or helpers. Okay. So let me say this. The clothes you are putting on was first a thought in somebody's mind. The chair that you are sitting on was a thought in somebody's mind. The device, I am in Nigeria. You guys are in Kenya. We are thousands and thousands of miles apart from each other. I have never seen Atlanta before in my life. I mean, physically. We have not met before. Everything that we began to do together happened because of technology. I wrote a material, I put it out there. She got a hold of the material in another part of the world. She got so excited and she contacted me because I'm a free person and I put my details there. Okay. And so we started to talk. This is the point. That smartphone that she used and the smartphone that every one of you is using today to connect with me was a thought in somebody's mind. The chair you are sitting on was a thought in somebody's mind. The house you are living in was a thought in somebody's mind. Everything that you see today, was a thought in somebody's mind. Was a thought in somebody's mind. So what it means is that thoughts precede everything else. Thoughts precede space. Thoughts precede time. Thoughts precede matter. Thoughts precede energy. Everything you see today was a thought. Was a thought. Are you catching what I'm saying? Okay. Are you guys still with me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So it was a thought in somebody's mind. Okay. Everything that you see today was a thought in somebody's mind. So it means that the foundation of everything is thought. What it means is that the universe, even the universe, was once a thought in God's mind. Before God made anything, before God made space, made time, made matter, made energy, or anything, everything existed as a thought in his mind. Every single thing existed as a thought in his mind. Okay? Existed as a thought in his mind. So it's obvious what I'm talking about. So it means that the foundation of everything is thought. Are you getting what I'm saying? That's the foundation. That's the beginning of everything. Is thought. If you don't get it at that point, then you're not going to get it at any other point. So it means if you want to change your life, if you want to change your existence, you have to begin at the level of thought. You have to begin if you want to change anything you are seeing today, it has to be at the level of thought. Every action you take has to be, it is first of all a thought in your mind. So you change at that level. Okay? You make things happen at that level. You create at the thought level. It is after you have done things, you have shifted things, you have created things at the thought level that you begin to act upon those things. You begin to make things happen. So that is how it works. That is how it works. All right. So I started by saying that the quality of your thinking is directly proportional to the quality of your existence. Let me put it this way. The quality of the thoughts in your mind is directly proportional to the quality of the results of your life. The quality of the thoughts in your mind is directly proportional to the quality of the results in your life. So for instance, there are some of you here, you're listening to me, you can do a lot of things, but you have never done any. You have not done any. A lot of you here, you are filled with so much potential, so much things that you could do to change the world around you. But you have not, because your thoughts have been the thoughts of a poor person. Your thoughts have been the thoughts of, pardon me, a failure. Your thoughts have been the thoughts of a person that is filled with entitlement mentality. Those have been your thoughts. Those are the things you think about. And because of that, you have not even, some of you have not even attempted anything. There are a lot of people, you are going to school doing what they said you should do, hoping that your life will be changed, not knowing that that part doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. And that's why I tell people that, look, you have to question whatever it is you see around you. It does not have to be so. You have to question the things around in your environment. You've got to do that. So you don't just accept what people say, what people are doing. You don't accept those things. No, it doesn't work like that. That's, by the way, anyway, I'm going to come to that point maybe later on. But the point is that the quality of the thoughts in your mind is highly proportional to the quality of the results of your life. And that's the truth. So there is that relationship. Okay. The better thoughts you start thinking, the better your life becomes. The better the thoughts you start thinking, the better your life becomes. Let me put it this way, because it's not a magic, okay? This is how it works. There's a way it works. So everything begins as a thought. So you start as a thought. Your thoughts form your belief system or your belief. A belief is a thought you have accepted to be true and that now drives your action, okay? A belief is a thought that you have accepted to be true and that now drives your action. So every thought, your thoughts, okay, form your belief system. Your belief system form or drive your actions. Your actions produce the results of your life. That is the way it goes. That's the order. That's the way it goes. You first of all start with thoughts. It begins with your thoughts. Your thoughts form your belief system. Your belief system drive your actions. Your actions produce the results of your life. Okay, that is how it works. And in the coming meetings I'm going to have, I'm going to explain that more and more. But that is basically how it works. It starts with your thoughts. Those thoughts form your belief system. Your beliefs are things that you have now accepted as true. For instance, I am a man. I have accepted it as true. And then there are people in the US who are male, but they have somehow found a way to deceive themselves that they are women. And that has become, even though we know it is false, but it has become their belief. So what you have accepted as true is your belief. And that belief will drive everything that you do. If you believe you are a failure, you will not do anything to progress. That's the truth. You won't do anything to move forward. You won't. You believe that you are weak, there is nothing you are going to do to move forward because of your belief. If you believe you are a failure, you won't do anything to progress. You won't. Okay. I will end with this story. I don't know whether are you guys see with me? Is it making sense?
Yeah, Vincent, Hussein, Winnie, Velma, you can react and maybe comment, type in the chat box.
No, please let me know if it's still making sense, because I want to wrap up. We have just about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, Vincent has an emoji there.
Good. All right. Okay, so let me try to wrap up. So look at it. Let me say this. I heard of a story, just to buttress this point and then to wrap up. I heard of a story of a guy. This is a true life story about a man called George Danzig. He was a professor of mathematics. Very powerful man. Powerful guy in the US. I believe he's dead now. And then on this certain day, he met with a guy called Robert Schuller. I know some of you might know this guy called Robert Schuller. I think he's dead now too also. Robert Schuller and George Danzig. So they met on the airplane. They didn't know themselves before this time. And then they began to chat. They began to talk. And then they exchanged pleasantries. And George Danzig asked Robert Schuller what he did for a living. Robert Schuller said, okay, this is what I do. I'm a professional speaker, motivational speaker. I teach about, the potentials of the human mind and all of that, belief and things like that. And then George now said, wow, that's interesting, because Robert Schuller was a motivational speaker. He taught a lot about the power of the mind and things like that. So George was so excited about it. And then George decided to share with Robert Schuller a personal testimony or experience that he had along the lines of the power of beliefs. So he said that in the 1937, around that time, during the World War, or during the Great Depression, actually, 1933, around that time, he said that, of course, jobs were scarce, things were difficult, because it was an economic, there was an economic issue across the globe, especially within the US. And then what they discovered was that things were very tough for people. And so George, at this moment, George was still in the university, was studying he was studying mathematics in the university. And then there were no jobs anywhere. Things were difficult for people. Life was tough for a lot of people. And then, but there was a promise made in the university that anybody that finished with the highest mark, the best grade, was going to become a lecturer. That was the promise that was made. When that promise was made, people were doing all they could to study, to become, to pass their exams, with flying colors. George said that he read more than anybody. He studied. He read so much that he came late for the exam. By the time he came to the exam hall, they had started. And then when he came, the professor asked him, gave him his papers, and he started solving. And then he said he noticed that there were 8 questions on the paper. George said he solved all 8 questions. And then he saw 2 questions on the board. And then he said, after solving those 8 questions on the paper, I looked at the questions on the board, tried to solve the first one, he could not, tried to solve the second one, I could not. And then the bell rang, and then he went to his professor and said, look, I was able to solve most of the questions, but I couldn't solve 2 questions that I was given. And then the professor said, look, you can go back home, do whatever you can, but make sure you submit it by so and so time, so and so day. He gave him the day, about in like 4 or 5 days from that time. So George said he went home, he tried solving the first one, he couldn't, try solving the second one, he couldn't. He did everything to solve the question, he could not. Then he said, like, on Wednesday or so, about 3 days of solving that question, trying to solve the question, he said he solved the first one. And then after solving the first one, he moved to the second one, then he solved it too. And so he went to his professor's office and submitted the paper. The professor was not there. He said, early in the morning, the next day, the professor came to his room, banging his door. And then when he opened the door, the guy was shouting that, George, you made history. And he said, George said he was amazed. How did I make history? And then the professor said, those two questions on the board that you solved, they were not a part of the examination. They were not a part of it. He said, I gave 8 questions, and those are the questions on the paper. You solved all of them perfectly. He said, those 2 questions were questions that no scientist had solved, no mathematician. And then he said, even the great Albert Einstein could not solve those 2 questions. He died without solving them. And then he said, when I gave the papers to your classmates, the exam papers, I wrote those 2 questions to them, and then I told them that, look, you know what, I have enjoyed teaching all of you these few years, and I want to give you 2 questions that nobody has been able to solve. Even Albert Einstein has not been able to solve it. And then he said, well, throughout your life, play with the questions, try to solve it. I know you're not able to solve it, but just do what you can. The thing was that when the professor said those things, George was not there. George did not hear those things. So when George was at home trying to solve those 2 questions, George said he thought to himself that, look, I know that somebody in my class must have solved these 2 questions, and I am as smart as they are. George said he was convinced that, somebody, one of the students, one of his fellow students, must have solved those 2 questions. And he told himself, he said, if they could solve it, why not me? I am as intelligent as any of them. The truth was that none of his classmates solved those 2 questions. None of them even attempted the questions because they had heard their professors say that those questions were not solvable. George did not hear it. The difference between George and his classmates was that George had a different belief. He could do it. His classmate heard something differently. That's the difference between them. Guess what? George solved the questions. He became associate professor. And that was how he was able to skate through that difficult time. And all of that was because he did not hear his professor say that those questions were not solvable. If he had been in that class and he had heard the professor say that those questions cannot be solved, George would not have been able to solve them. He would not even have tried solving those questions. Folks, let me tell you the truth. There is so much within you. And what is stopping it is the kind of thinking that you have. You have a faulty thinking. Your thinking is not correct yet. You have to align your thinking properly. And that is the way to change whatever it is. I see, it doesn't matter what you are going through. It is ultimately, fundamentally a problem of thinking. I'm telling you, there is a way out of whatever it is, whatever situation or circumstance you are going through. There is a way out of it. I'm going to stop here, Atlanta. I think I'm done. Thank you so much. Over to you, Atlanta.
Wow, that's very amazing.